Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be comparing how to add your inclusions to get the best results. I am going to show you guys how to put the inclusions in the stretch and folds, and at the end when we are shaping our dough to put it into the refrigerator to do its cold proof. So we're going to start off by showing you guys doing the stretch and folds. I skipped the part where I add all the ingredients to make the dough, but I have previous videos where you can see how I do that and the ingredients and all of that. So for the first stretch and fold, I like to stretch the dough to strengthen it and do regular stretch and folds. I add the inclusions until the second set of stretch and folds. So the left dough, we're going to leave it alone. We're just going to do the regular stretch and folds, and on the right side we're going to add our inclusions. I am doing jalapeno and cheddar because this seems to be one of the hardest inclusions to get right, because the cheese does tend to weigh down the dough as it bakes. So it tends to be more on like the flat, denser side. So here you see me putting some of the inclusions into the dough, stretching it over, adding more inclusions, stretching it over again until I am done adding all of the inclusions. I added 98 grams of jalapenos, fresh jalapenos, and 105 grams of cheddar cheese. I try to cut the cheese up into small cubes because the bigger the cube, the bigger the pocket holes I've noticed that I get when the loaf is done baking. So here you're going to see I just keep going all the way around until I finish adding the inclusions. So once I'm done adding the inclusions, I like to tuck in the inclusions in a way. So I make the dough into a ball, shaping it to where all the inclusions are on the inside of the dough, just to create that smooth surface on top. And so when we do our third stretch and fold, we can do coil folds. The coil folds will help us keep all the inclusions inside of the dough and not on the outside. That way, when we are shaping the dough, it's not all bumpy and create holes on the outside, if that makes sense. So after the second set of stretch and folds, we wait another 30 minutes to let the dough rest on the counter, and then we do our last set. So here I am just doing regular stretch and folds on the dough on the left, and on the right we are going to do the coil folds. So here you can see that I'm starting on the coil folds. This is a little bit more gentle on the dough so it doesn't rip. And since we do have inclusions on here, I like to do it this way because when I do it the regular stretch and fold way, it just rips my dough and the inclusions are just like on the outside, ripping the dough easier. Oh, one thing I don't want to forget to mention is I did add less water to my recipe. Usually I add 350 grams of water, and this time I added 325 grams because the jalapeno and the cheddar do have moisture and they tend to make my dough too sticky. So once your dough passes the window pane, it is ready to just sit and bulk ferment on the counter. So now that the bulk fermentation has ended, I'm going to start off by shaping the loaf with the inclusions already in it. I don't laminate my dough because I want to keep all of those nice bubbles, and I don't think it's necessary to laminate at this point. So I just put my dough into a banneton and I start to shape my second loaf. So for the second loaf, I do laminate the dough into a rectangle, and I did add the same amount of inclusions to both loaves. I did weigh them just to make sure for the purpose of this video that I didn't add more to one dough than the other, which would result in like cheating, I guess, in a way of the end result. So I did weigh out the jalapeno and the cheddar, and I did set it aside just to make sure that they both had the same amount of inclusions. So here you see me adding the inclusions, and one thing I have noticed is that when I add the inclusions, when I laminate the dough right before shaping, I get bigger pockets of holes on the dough because the cheese is more together in a way. You see here how I kind of put the cheese like all over the place, but once you close that dough, the cheese kind of gets close together in a way, if that makes sense. So when it's baking, there's a bunch of cheese stuck together rather than when we add the inclusions as we do the stretch and folds. Then the inclusions are within the dough, if that makes sense. So they're not all stuck together. So when they bake, they don't melt together. So you're going to see after we bake the dough how the dough that we did the stretch and folds with the inclusions on it, it's going to be more on the flat side. And the loaf that we are shaping here now, the loaf with the inclusions that we add till towards the end before shaping, that one had a better rise to it and it looked a little bit more brown. It looked better on the outside. And I was like, ooh, these, you would assume that the second loaf would be best, but in my opinion, it wasn't. So here you see me stitching the dough. I also scored them both the same. I did everything exactly the same just to make sure that there wasn't any difference and that we were trying to get the exact same result for both. I even baked them side by side just to make sure that I wasn't doing much different in both doughs. So this is what they look like after we took off the lid, and they're beautiful. You can see that the cheese on the one on the right is like popping through, and look, this is the end result. So the left one is where we added all the inclusions in the stretch and folds, and the one on the right was when we shaped it. That's where we added all the inclusions. So this is the crumb on the second loaf, the one where we add the jalapeno and the cheese towards the end. You can see that it has huge pockets of like air where the cheese got stuck together and it melted, so it didn't rise properly. As the first loaf where we add the inclusions during the stretch and folds looks better distributed, and the dough kind of like bakes in between the inclusions. Here is a side by side, and I think that the best way is to add the inclusions during the stretch and folds. Just add less water to your recipe and it'll be great. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.